So last week we started Ezra chapter 8. We're getting close to the end. Getting close. And in the beginning of Ezra chapter 8, we saw in the first 14 verses another list of names. And it was very similar to the list that we read back in chapter 2. This list in chapter 8 fell into three categories. It had the descendants of the priests, of Phineas and Ithamar. Also, we found in verse 2 that there was a descendant of the royal lineage of David. And then there were 12 families, 12 family groups. And kind of interesting about those 12 family groups, they weren't royalty, they weren't priests, they weren't Levites, they were just families of people. But of those 12 families, 11 of them had people from their family that came in the first wave of returnees to Jerusalem. Those that came with Zerubbabel. All but one of the 12 had family that had gone before. We noted that the list of names there added up, and when you added in a guesstimate of all the women and children that would have accompanied that group, there was probably 5,000 to about 8,000 people that were present there. And it sounds like a lot of people. But when you consider the first group, that first wave was like 46 or 47,000 that went. It's a much smaller group, but it's an important group. Now, Ezra did not go about this haphazardly. It wasn't like the king gave him permission and he just said, okay, let's go, and loaded everybody up and they left. Ezra had a plan. He realized that this was going to take some planning. He couldn't just throw them in the back of the station wagon and say, let's go. So he had everybody meet up at a common point, at the River Ahava. And the reason for the gathering there was so that he could basically get account of everybody that was there, get account of what families were represented there, kind of take an inventory of all that was going with them. Kind of important considering that it was about a 900-mile journey, and it was going to take them approximately 4 months to get where they were going. And, it's easy to have people get lost along the way. It's easy to forget a whole family somewhere when you stop along the way. So he wanted to know all of who was there. And in this gathering of information, he found out that there was kind of an oversight. There was kind of something that was missing from the group. They had no Levites in the group. Of the 12 families that they had, and of the priests, and of the royal lineage and everything, all that was great, but they had no Levites. And when you have priests that are going back to minister at the temple, the priests need those Levites. They need those helpers at the temple, because those Levites took care of the little things. They took care of the things that needed to be taken care of day to day around the temple. They took care of preparing the offerings when needed. And if the priests didn't have the help of all these Levites, they would be doing that. And if they're doing that, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing as far as serving the Lord and ministering unto the people and being the go-between between the people and God. So he noticed that the Levites were missing. And he sent back a delegation of people, and he sent them to a city called Cassiphia. And it is believed that Cassiphia was a place where there was actually like a training center for Levites. Would have been almost like a seminary run by a guy by the name of Iddo, I believe. And he sent this group of men back there to gather up some Levites. And he sent them with words, what to say, and everything else. And we're not told exactly what they were to say, but I could imagine it was something along the lines of, God is calling you. God needs you now, today. Well, the result of the gathering of Levites was 38 Levites and 220 Nethinims. The Nethinims were even lesser than the Levites. They did singing, they did a lot of the other stuff that even the Levites didn't have to take care of. So he's got a great number of priests going, but only 38 Levites. And we kind of discussed the fact that, if it was us, we'd probably be like, 38? Oh man, that's horrible. But he recognizes the hand of God in all of this. And he gives God the glory for providing 38. He was like, wow, 38 Levites, this is great. 220 Nethinims. This is exactly what we need. This is what we've been waiting for. The hand of our God is upon us. He's provided for us. So the plan's working. But even though he's got all the people there and he's got his plan in place, he recognizes that there's something else that has to be done before they move. They need to pray. They need to pray for God's protection. So he proclaims a fast and prayer for all the people to take part in. And we're told why specifically they were to pray. And that was because he was ashamed to ask the king for protection. And I don't like the word ashamed. I think it's correct in its context and how it's written and everything. But I think it was more an idea of him, how could I ask the king for protection after I've already declared to the king how gracious the hand of our God is upon those that seek them, how great he is, how powerful he is, and how his wrath burns against those that oppose him. My God is so great and so awesome, and he's going to take care of us. By the way, can you send us with an armed guard? Just doesn't sound right. So he recognizes that they are taking 5,000 to 8,000 people and moving them 900 miles together, and they're going through territory that could be hostile, where there could be people that want to rob them or kill them for whatever reason. And oh, by the way, they're carrying all that treasure with them. And there is a lot of treasure. So he realizes that this is a dangerous situation he's putting these people into. And rather going back to the king and saying, hey king, I forgot, can you send an armed guard? He says, no, we're going to go to the King of Kings. We're going to pray that the Lord will protect us. And the end of the verse basically says, he heard our prayer. Ezra was confident that when they began that journey, that they were going to make it without any problem. He was entreated of us. So he had confidence that the Lord heard what they had asked and that he was going to protect them and provide for their needs. So tonight we're going to look at a bit more of this chapter. There is one more thing that needs to be done before they move. And that is to divide up all of these treasures for safety and for just carrying them from one point to another. And we see in this next portion the hand of God upon the people, but the stewardship also of the people. In verses 24 through 27, we see Ezra consecrated for accountability. Starting in verse 24, it says, Then I separated 12 of the chief of the priests, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and 10 of their brethren with them, and weighed unto them the silver and the gold and the vessels, even the offering of the house of our God, which the king and his counselor and his lords and all Israel there present had offered. I even weighed unto their hands 650 talents of silver, and silver vessels 100 talents, and of gold 100 talents, also 20 basins of gold of 1,000 drams, and 2 vessels of fine copper, precious as gold. So before embarking on this journey, Ezra selects 12 of the leading priests, 12 of the chief priests, and basically 12 Levites to divide this massive fortune. So he's divided all of this between 24 people. This treasure would be worth millions of dollars in today's society, in our currency. 650 talents of silver, 100 talents of gold, dozens of precious vessels to be taken to the temple. Ezra recognized his responsibility in the handling of this mass of wealth. And he chose these 24 men and was going to hold them accountable. And he basically recognized that they needed to be held responsible for what they were given. You notice he doesn't just grab a handful and give it to this guy and grab a handful and give it to this guy and grab it. Everything is weighed out and measured. Everything that is given to them is measured and recorded before it is given to them. Now, sometimes people read this and they think, well, why is that important? This isn't really anything that matters. Why do we need to know this? Well, there has to be accountability. And Ezra is holding each one of these men accountable for what they are being entrusted with. And he himself is being a good steward, because who has provided all this treasure for him to take back to Jerusalem? Was it the king and all his cronies? It may have come through their hands, but who actually provided all of this was God. And he is recognizing the responsibility he has. And he's taking it very seriously. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's his. So he is handling it properly. He's not being careless. He models organized administration. He shows what that kind of financial transparency should be like. You notice, though, also that no one person is responsible for all of it. It is entrusted to him, and then he divides it. And each one is given a certain amount of responsibility. Raises a question for us as Christians. How careful are we with what God has entrusted to us? You know, we think about all that we have, and are we foolish and haphazard with it? Or do we use reason and logic, common sense? Are we good stewards of what God has given us? In verses 28 through 30, Ezra lets these men know you're not just carrying money. This is a calling. This is something that is you being called to holiness. Verses 28 through 30 says, I said unto them, ye are holy unto the Lord. What does the word holy mean?
Set apart.
Set apart. Yeah. He has set them apart for this purpose here. You're holy unto the Lord. The vessels are holy also. These vessels, these bags that you're carrying, this money that you're carrying, this is all money that has been consecrated. It has all been set apart for the temple. So recognize the fact that you are holy and what you're carrying is holy. It is set apart unto the Lord. That's a big responsibility right there that that he's given them. The silver and the gold are a freewill offering unto the Lord God of your fathers. Watch ye and keep them until you weigh them before the chief of the priests and the Levites and the chief of the fathers of Israel at Jerusalem in the chambers of the house of the Lord. So took the priests and the Levites the weight of the silver and the gold and the vessels to bring them to Jerusalem unto the house of God. So Ezra gives these appointed leaders a sobering charge. You are holy to the Lord. The vessels are holy. What's in them is holy. It is all sanctified. It is all set apart unto the Lord. You are, and what you're carrying is. That puts quite a burden on them. It puts quite a responsibility, let's say, on each one of them. They are to guard these things vigilantly until they can be weighed again inside the chambers at the temple in Jerusalem. So as serious as Ezra took the charge and took the responsibility of all the gold and the silver and all this, he wants them to handle it as responsibly and as seriously as he did. They are to guard that which is sacred. These men were tasked with keeping themselves holy so they could properly protect that which belonged to the Lord. The priests accept this heavy responsibility, knowing that they would face a literal accounting at the end. Now, everything that they have been given has been recorded. They know exactly how much each person is carrying. So when they get to the temple to turn it in, if there's anything missing, who is responsible for it? They are. So they are making sure there's no holes in the bag. They're making sure that every vessel that they're given is accounted for at every stop along the way, because they want to make sure when they get to Jerusalem, everything they have been entrusted with is there with them, and they can present it. Again, it kind of calls us as Christians to give that some thought, to live with an eternal perspective, knowing that one day we will give account for what we have done with what God has given us. Not just our financial gifts that God has blessed us with, but with the spiritual gifts, with the life that he has given us, with the opportunities that he has given us. We will give account for all of that before the Lord. I wonder if we take that responsibility as seriously as Ezra was asking these men to. God's hand upon them, God's sovereignty, does not give man an excuse to be careless and act shamefully with that which he's been entrusted with. Well, God's got all this. I don't need to worry about it, right? You know, God's blessing me with money, so I'll just spend it however I want because God just keeps providing, right? So it doesn't matter what I do because God's just going to keep pouring it in. That's not the right attitude. We are called to holiness. And that includes being people of integrity and being accountable before God and before man. Think about it. Each one of these priests and these Levites that were given that bag, they were accountable not only to God, but they were going to be held accountable by the men that counted when they got there. God ultimately, yes, but also before men. And honestly, you know, the ones that knew that they were carrying it, they were going to be watching them along the way. Think about those men that are walking around with bags of gold. You don't think that the people are going to be like kind of watching them to see if they're doing something they should or shouldn't with that gold? They're going to be accountable before God and before man. Ezra was in fact searching for a church treasurer. But with the amount of treasure there was, he needed 24. It took 24, and all of them needed to be men of personal integrity and men that would accept being accountable for what they had been entrusted with. We see in verses 31 and 32 that they were covered by God's grace. Verse 31 says, "Then we departed from the river of Ahava on the 12th day of the first month to go to Jerusalem. And the hand of our God was upon us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and of such as lay in wait by the way. And we came to Jerusalem and abode there 3 days." They have fasted, they have refused the military escort, and they have finally come to that point where they have departed from the river Ahava. Verse 31 contains that triumphant climax of the passage. "The hand of our God was upon us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and of such as lay in wait by the way." God could have just simply provided the gold himself at Jerusalem. He could have supernaturally put it there, but he didn't. He chose to send it by the hand of Ezra. And Ezra entrusted these 24 men along the way. God worked through the faith, courage, and the journey of his people. They walked the long miles, and God kept the thieves and criminals at bay. They arrived safely, and it says they rested for 3 days. Ezra set aside all that was consecrated unto the Lord, all the gold, the silver, the brass, the bronze, and all the vessels. He selected 24 men to be held accountable for carrying the wealth, and he accepted the call to holy, and they accepted the call to holiness placed upon them. Because of their faithfulness and obedience, the hand of their God was upon them. When we properly care for that which God has given us, and when we remain accountable before God and before man, we can expect the same blessing of grace that Ezra and those sojourners enjoyed, that the hand of their God was upon them. His grace will be upon us also. We're going to stop there for tonight. Next week, Lord willing, we will finish chapter 8. We'll see the accounting of all the treasure and the worship that takes place when all is finished. Now let's have a word of prayer. Lord God, we thank you for this time together tonight to pray and to study your word. Help us, Lord, through these lessons to draw closer to you. Help us, Lord, to recognize our responsibility, our accountability before you, Lord, for all that you have entrusted us with.